Deep in the California desert, thousands of brand new cars are just sitting. No one's driving them. They're simply rotting under the sun. Why would a billion-dollar company like Volkswagen dump billions of dollars worth of perfectly good cars in a graveyard? Well, it all starts with a massive lie, a secret piece of code, and a scandal that almost destroyed the biggest car maker on Earth. To understand why these cars are rotting in the desert, we have to go back to 2009. At the time, Volkswagen had a dream. They wanted to conquer the American market. But there was a problem. Americans loved big, powerful engines, and the EPA had super strict rules about emissions. VW's solution? Clean diesel. They marketed it as the holy grail, fast, fuel-efficient, and better for the planet than a hybrid. People fell for it hard. Hundreds of thousands of people traded in their Toyotas and Fords for these eco-friendly Jettas and Passats. VW even ran Super Bowl ads about how clean these cars were. But behind closed doors at VW headquarters in Germany, engineers were sweating. They knew the truth. It was physically impossible for their engines to meet US emission standards while maintaining that high performance. They were backed into a corner. If they admitted they couldn't do it, the company would lose billions. So they didn't admit it. Instead, they wrote a secret piece of code, a defeat device. It was a software trick that could sense when the car was being tested for emissions. When the computer felt the test sensors, it turned on the full pollution controls. But the moment the car hit the open road, it turned them off, spewing up to 40 times the legal limit of nitrogen oxide into the air. The clean diesel revolution was a total, calculated lie. For years, VW got away with it. They became the biggest automaker in the world. But in 2014, a small group of researchers at West Virginia University decided to test these cars in real-world conditions. They hooked up portable sensors to a Jetta and a Passat and drove them from Los Angeles to Seattle. They expected the numbers to be great. They were horrified. The sensors were screaming. The cars weren't just a little over the limit, they were pumping out smog-forming pollutants at levels that shouldn't even be possible for a modern car. The researchers alerted the EPA. For a year, VW tried to play it off as a technical glitch. They even tried to recall the cars for a software update that didn't actually fix anything. But the EPA didn't budge. They threatened to ban all VW sales in the US for 2016. Finally, the CEO had to come clean. "We've totally screwed up," he admitted. The scandal, now known as Dieselgate, exploded. Volkswagen was forced to pay out over $30 billion in fines and settlements. Part of that deal? They had to offer to buy back nearly 500,000 cars from angry owners across America. And that, my friends, is how the Victorville Graveyard was born. Imagine you're Volkswagen. Suddenly, you have hundreds of thousands of cars coming back to you. You can't sell them because they're illegal to drive. You can't crush them yet because of legal red tape. Where do you put 500,000 cars? You can't exactly park them at the local mall. VW started scouting for boneyards. They rented out a massive abandoned Air Force base in Victorville, California. They rented a stadium parking lot in Detroit. They even took over a former sugar beet factory in Minnesota. But Victorville is the most famous one. Why? Because the desert is a double-edged sword. The dry air prevents rust, which is good. But the intense UV rays and heat destroy everything else. The rubber seals, the dashboards, the interior fabrics. At its peak, the Victorville lot held 21,000 cars. From the air, it looks like a giant mosaic, rows upon rows of Golfs, Beetles, and Audis. It's a haunting sight, a monument to corporate greed. But here's the kicker. These cars weren't just sitting there for a few weeks. They sat there for years. Some are still there. And as they sit, they become a magnet for a whole different kind of trouble. With billions of dollars in cars on the line, you'd expect crazy security. But in 2017, something weird started happening at the Victorville lot. A few cars went missing, then a few more, then dozens. Security was surprisingly light for such a massive area. Local thieves realized that these cars, while illegal for VW to sell, were perfectly functional. They started sneaking in at night, hot-wiring the cars and driving them right off the lot. But it gets weirder. Some of these stolen cars started showing up at legit dealerships across state lines with forged titles. People were buying clean diesel cars that were technically supposed to be in a government-mandated graveyard. The police eventually caught on after a massive sting operation. They found dozens of the stolen VWs hidden in various spots around California. It turned out to be an inside job involving some of the transport contractors. It added another layer of chaos to the whole scandal. Not only was the company corrupt, but the graveyard itself had become a lawless Wild West for car thieves. So, what's the end game? Does VW just wait for the sun to melt these cars into the sand? Not quite. The EPA gave VW a choice. They could either scrap the cars, literally crush them into cubes, or they could fix them. If VW could develop a software and hardware fix that actually met emission standards, they could resell the cars as certified pre-owned. But fixing them is a nightmare. It's not just a quick code update. For many models, they have to install entirely new exhaust systems and tanks for a fluid called AdBlue, which helps neutralize pollutants. It's incredibly expensive. And remember, these cars have been sitting in the desert for 3, 4, or 5 years. The tires are flat-spotted, the batteries are dead, and the rodents have probably chewed through half the wiring. For many of these cars, the cost of the fix plus the cost of the repairs is more than the car is even worth. Surprisingly, VW actually managed to fix and resell over 300,000 of the bought-back cars. They shipped them all over the world, to Eastern Europe, South America, and back onto US lots. But for the thousands of cars still sitting in Victorville, many are too far gone. They are the lost souls of the diesel world. They'll likely be stripped for parts and crushed, a literal billion-dollar pile of scrap metal. Today, the Victorville lot is much smaller than it used to be. Most of the cars have been moved, fixed, or destroyed. But the image of those thousands of cars shimmering in the heat remains a powerful symbol. It's a reminder of what happens when a win-at-all-costs corporate culture meets the reality of environmental laws. We like to think that we're moving toward a greener future with electric cars and zero emissions. But the Dieselgate scandal showed us how easy it is to fake progress. VW spent more money on the fix and the fines than they would have spent just developing a better engine in the first place. It was a massive waste of resources, energy, and human effort, all because they wanted to save a few bucks on research and development. So, the next time you see a Volkswagen Jetta on the road, take a look at the tailpipe. It might be one of the survivors from the Victorville lot. It's a car with a story of a lie that was too big to hide, and a desert graveyard that the world will never forget. If you found this dive into the Victorville graveyard fascinating, hit that like button. It really helps the channel out. And I want to hear from you. Do you think VW has actually learned its lesson, or are we just waiting for the next big scandal? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.